Hi, I'm Maria Geryk, Superintendent of the Amherst Pelham and Amherst Pelham Regional Schools. Thanks for joining us today for another segment of Voices from Our Schools, an educational roundtable or square table discussion. And today's topic is school choice. And I'm very fortunate to have with me Mike Hayes, who's the principal of the middle school, Marta Guevara, Director of Student Achievement and Accountability, and Kathy Mazer, who is a Director of Human Resources. So thank you all for joining today.
Thanks.
So we're going to talk a little bit about choice, which is more of an operational end of our world, which is funding resources for our schools, as well as talk a little bit about the implications of being a choice district and what does that mean. So why don't we start with a little bit about what is choice? So I think Marta, would you mind starting us off a little bit about what is school choice?
Sure. The school choice program actually allows parents and guardians to choose to send their children to schools outside of their community in which they reside. And so the sending districts pay the tuition for the receiving districts. Every year districts decide whether they want to be a part of the school choice program. So school committees choose, they vote whether to participate or not. And they also choose to select how many seats or slots they have and at what grade level. For us in our schools, for example, our Pelham Elementary School is a choice school. In terms of our Amherst schools, they're not school choice programmed yet. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. And then our regional schools, both the middle school and the high school, are participating in the school choice program. And so every year the school committees vote, and they also, help us make that decision.
So the vote is for our schools to accept school choice kids
Correct.
in.
That's all we need in terms of the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. They just want our school committees to decide whether they want to participate or not. In terms of the other details, clearly that's for the superintendent and and in this case her staff to decide. But clearly we just they vote whether we participate or not, and then we have to sort out the details.
Great, thanks, Marta. So Kathy, the regional schools have been a school of choice district for.
Well, actually since 1999. I think it was part of education reform in 1993 that the legislature decided to introduce the opportunity for parents and guardians to look outside of their own school districts to their neighboring districts to place their students. And we started again in 1999 at the regional level by accepting 80 students. And so that was about 16 students in grades 7 through 11. We didn't think it was in the best interest of kids to start their senior year in our district. And we've participated, I think, successfully since then.
And it's been ebbs and flows in the amount of students clearly that we've accepted and such.
Yeah, the most we've had, I think, is around 120 at any time. Right now, I think we have around 70 or 75.
And if, so we vote to have students come in, but our families can also choose to have their students attend choice in another school district. So then we see also the revenue exit.
That's right.
With students if they choose to enter into another school district.
Yes.
Thank you. So should we talk a little bit about, kind of what is this process? So when I know that the regional school committee last night, very late last night, voted to continue to be a school choice district for the regional schools, 7 through 12, and accept slots. What is the process for families if people wanted to consider enrolling their children from outside of our catchment basin into our schools? What does that look like?
So in terms of the actual technical process, it's quite simple. Before that, clearly, and I think we're going to discuss that in a little bit, we have to decide how many seats for what grades, etc., which the principals are an integral part of that discussion. But once we know, we advertise in the local newspapers and in our websites. We do a call for school choice and specify for the grades. We have a deadline. And this year we're hoping to do it earlier. Last year it was the beginning of May. So
Right.
hopefully we'll be able to do it earlier.
Right.
And so we have a simple application that we post online. People can fill it out electronically or send a paper copy.
Okay.
We set a deadline, and then we do a lottery.
Okay.
So we basically put all the names of the applicants. We do a lottery once, and we do that with many people present, just a very clean, open process.
Right.
Then either students are selected and get a slot or a seat, and if they don't, they receive a number.
Okay.
And so we we communicate this to all families.
Okay.
Once, if families change their mind and don't accept the slot, clearly then we go to the first number
On the waiting
on the
list.
wait list.
Okay.
And we do that. We keep the wait list until we're done with registration, and then we start the process again.
Okay. So it's an opportunity for families to choose where their children attend school within public schools, and funding follows. And also, the families would, as part of this commitment, transport their children to the school that they would be
Yeah, that's an
entering.
important piece.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a choice, and so their commitment is to transport on time,
Yeah.
and every day their children and families are pretty good about that.
Great. Thanks, Marta. So, Mike, I want to talk a little bit about, the financial implications for a school system and for a building, accepting choice, and what that looks like, and then really talk about how we approach choice. Okay, so if you want to start us off a little bit there.
Yeah, so first on the logistics end of it, for every student that we receive from a different district, we receive $5,000
Okay.
per year for that student. So
Okay.
if we take someone in 7th grade, we have them for 6 years. Every year we'll receive $5,000, and it actually comes from the state.
Right.
And essentially that's their allocation to support it. The other thing I think to know is that the state does reimburse the districts that the kids come from, because it's $5,000 that district would not get, but they actually reimburse it, and I think it's like 100% the first year, 50% the year after. So what they do is it's a phase-out effect on that sending district. The other thing to know, there's a lot of questions around the finances for school choice. So just to throw out some other numbers, at the region, I think it's well publicized that I think we're around $17,000 per child.
Yeah, per pupil.
And then, the other, so one aspect that we have to look at is, well, does it make sense? We spend $17,000 per child when we only get $5,000. So the reality is the $17,000 has a tremendous number of fixed costs that do not affect the number of students that might be in a building. So for instance, my salary does not change based on the number of kids that I have in the building.
Right.
I'm going to have one librarian. We're going to have electrical costs that will remain the same. So there's this whole variety of fixed costs. So what you have to look at is what things do change when a student comes in. So I'll get to that in 1 second in terms of talking the balance. But the other thing I think it's important to note is that people mix up school choice and charter a lot. And I think it's important to know that charter schools, when a student goes to a charter school from a district, the district actually sends their pure pupil costs. I think I have that correct. So, for instance,
There's an interesting. It's similar.
They also have an
interesting
offset, don't they?
formula.
There's a formula.
Well, actually, the offset is, and it's interesting because we're talking about it too, and it is really complicated. But the offset is the charter. The choice is a straight off the chapter.
Oh, choice,
7.
you don't offset
yes,
it.
exactly.
So I was mixing up. So it's
no,
charter
it's
is
very
the one.
complicated.
So, but essentially what it means, I believe, is we send, after those couple years of compensation from the state, we actually send the full $17,000 to the charter.
It's not something. Yeah, I mean, it's a very tricky formula.
it is
It's more than the 5. I know that.
yeah.
I know
It's
it's
much
not
more
a
than
fair-
the 5.
It's
not
much
fair.
more
Correct.
costly
Yeah.
to a district for a student to exit to a charter school
Yes.
than it is to
go to
exit in
school
choice.
choice. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to add in on the financial piece too, that it's important because people raise this question about if a student comes and there's additional costs with a student because they have special education needs,
Yeah,
what does that
yeah.
mean? And that is something, I think it's important to state that there are reimbursements that are allowed based
Yeah.
on the additional services.
Yeah, and so that is definitely a concern, and
Yes.
particularly, you know, in the Amherst schools, we're well known for having a very
Exceptional.
strong
Yeah.
set of special education services for students, and so
Exactly.
parents find, you know, I talk to lots of parents that are trying to find ways to bring their kids
Of
to the
course.
Amherst schools, and particularly for the services, and so it's important to know that children that have needs, that have additional
Right.
costs, that gets covered as well.
Right.
Um,
So how do you, like, if we're going to,
How do you
I think
think
it's
about it?
it's important,
Yeah.
I think, to talk about how we think about, so we don't add choice to increase our budget, you
Yeah.
know, so how do we approach if we're looking at where we might add choice students so that we're
Yeah.
walking an interesting line?
So to me, I think the easiest model for understanding it is the elementary classroom, right? And you know, so I think Pelham in particular.
Right,
So they have one classroom per grade.
right,
And so the idea is, well, if you have 10 kids in that classroom, you can add a certain number of kids to that classroom and you don't need additional services.
Exactly.
Right? So if we know a class teacher can take 18 students easily
right.
without needing an
Right.
additional paraprofessional, without needing additional layers of support, then, and say that whole class goes to art together. So whether it's 10 or 18, they can still go to art class. Well, in
Right.
that case, you can add on slots, right? So
Right.
in that example, you could add 8 slots to that
right,
that school in that particular grade, and you're adding $40,000 to the pool of money that school has to spend. So so that's a $40,000 gain. Now, if you added 15 kids, now you're suddenly up to 25 kids. You can't run one classroom, so now you're hiring another
Right.
class. So you hit that tipping point
Right.
where you then have to hire more teachers on,
Right. And
or
I-
a paraprofessional
right.
or something like that.
And I've appreciated, you know, my years in Amherst and with Pelham, looking at choice slots and how we do grapple with accepting school choice students because there's a philosophical issue at hand, as well as, you know, the real financial implications of accepting or not accepting. So I've appreciated the care that people have put into the process of considering how we add school choice students. And I know the same is true in Pelham as it is in the regional schools. To not increase costs, but to offer opportunity to round out, to make sure it's solidly, educationally sound, and then realizing the reality that revenues for schools, you know, it's unbelievably important to be able to supplement at times when the state and, you know, have not fully financially supported the schools. So I know it's a tricky line, and the philosophical. I don't know if people want to talk a little bit about, you know,
I think the state has set up a situation where they have districts competing with each other.
right,
And so certainly while we have the capacity to bring kids in, some of our kids leave as well. And
Right.
families make those individual decisions based on what they feel is best for their child.
right,
We've done surveys over the years of why kids select out of Amherst and why students select to come to Amherst. And largely we see it's because of the variety of opportunity here, the athletics, extracurricular activities, world language, the music, the instrumental, jazz ensemble, all of those things, those extra things that we've been able to maintain. And as Mike says, sort of backfill seats, if you will, without increasing staffing. Those types of special things have attracted students to our district over time.
right.
Also, the diversity in our schools,
Exactly.
in terms of, you know, the diverse, you know, ethnically speaking, but income, et cetera, the array that we have, it's just so enriching. So
Right.
that is very appealing to many of our families that
Many
come,
families.
many families with choice, and we get requests beyond what we're able to do currently.
Right.
Precisely for that reason, there are many people who work in the universities, the 5
Right.
colleges, who come into the town and would love to bring their children because of the prestige of the schools and, you know, the different programs we offer. So there are multiple reasons why this is a phenomenal thing for many families.
Sure. And I do recognize that it is, you know, the competition piece, which is a struggle for communities to say, if you open choice, you could be potentially taking revenue from another district, and in turn, we all lose revenue to each other, given the structure that the state has put in place. We have right now choice for region and for Pelham, and this is a conversation that we have been having in Amherst that will be voted next week. So this is another conversation, and again, with the same level of care of rounding out classrooms, because we have our own challenges, with class sizes being inconsistent at times.
Absolutely.
When I think about the philosophical side of it, I actually feel philosophically opposed to school choice, because I do believe in public education.
Sure.
And a piece to that, we need to make sure that within every community we're building up the strongest public schools we can. So there's that aspect to it. And last night, the regional school committee, if people watched that, Kip spoke very eloquently to that idea that it perpetuates that system of have and have nots. Because even when you think about school choice, transportation, becomes an equity issue. So parents that are able, or families that are able to take their kids, can have that option when it's not a choice for kids, for parents who can't do the transportation end. But so I have that piece. But then the other piece is the reality is that we work within the system. And so at the federal level and at the state level, they've created this system of competition, as Kathy has talked about.
Right.
And so if we don't actively engage in that competition, it actually hurts the kids that are staying in Amherst.
In our program.
So, just concretely, we look at 6th to 7th grade, so we're 7th and 8th grade middle school, and 6th to 7th grade, that's when a lot of students start to make choices about where they might go. And 7th grade is an important entry point, and then 9th grade as well. And so we lose kids to charter schools and to private schools at that point.
Right.
And when every child that we lose, we're losing funding.
Right.
And so what ends up happening is as we lose those kids in that funding, our schools have been shrinking. And for a long time, we were actually able to, it didn't affect so much at the middle school of the programming, but with the shrinking budget times, and also the shrinking population in the 4 towns in general, it now comes down to the point of, at the middle school, we're making these choices of how many teams we have. And whether we need to do half teams. And those have huge educational implications for the kids that are still here, that choose to stay. And so if we choose to not participate in the school choice, then we only get hurt by that, and we're not able to offset that by attracting kids in.
And that is the reality of our circumstance in other public schools situations when they're grappling with this issue, and how to raise revenue to be able to support the gap that exists for most of our schools right now. And I think Amherst has, I live in Amherst and have been in the area for a number of years, and what we hold, that we find so valuable for our children is to have a comprehensive experience where all children find a place to shine and to feel connected to school, and which is not just not a limited school experience. Not that there are those limited school experiences at times, but to really hold true to having a range of programming that supports children and offers and opportunities. And we have that, and I think it's a very, very large conversation to have to consider being less comprehensive. And we're holding on to that because it's what we truly believe is best for our kids. So I think it's important to recognize that this is a hard decision. It's not an easily resolved issue for, I think, any of us personally, but we also understand the realities, which right now we support our budget with, I think next year is about $470,000 worth of school choice funds for the regional schools. So it is substantial. And again, we'll have this conversation in Amherst next week as well. So with parents, we touched on this a little bit about the composition of our schools, what our schools has to offer. Let's talk a little bit more about that in terms of languages and just why people choose to come to our schools. And again, it's a very personal decision for a family of where their child attends school, and there's no judgment made when people choose to have their children exit our schools or join our schools, because as anyone knows who's raising a family, you make the decisions that you believe are best for your kids. So no judgment, and we do know why some people join us. So let's talk a little bit about that.
So at the middle school, I talk to parents that make this decision, and I think, as we mentioned before, there are a variety of reasons that we hear. And one of the first ones is the realities is that within the valley, the Amherst schools have a reputation for being a strong set of schools, and even within Amherst, with all our own arguments about what we're doing well and not doing well, I continue to hear consistently from families outside that the Amherst schools are doing a lot of things right, and that it's a good place to have your kids. So I think for some, it's just that general reputation that's been built over 30 years.
And some of that open debate and discussion is what makes us actually be such an
Absolutely.
exceptional school district,
Absolutely.
because we're forever challenging ourselves and learning and growing.
And then, I think one of the things so then I think the offerings is certainly, at the middle school we offer 4 world languages. It's very rare for a middle school to be able to offer that. We have 3 full music ensembles with chorus, orchestra, and band. All our students are able to take art, technology education, computers, and drama. And then I think then there's the other side of all the supports that we have in place.
Right.
Our commitment to bringing in strong teachers, and then both with special education, but also regular education, ELL supports that we have a tremendous amount of offerings. And the other thing that over time, one of the things I heard a lot about, we took a bunch of kids in this year into 7th grade, and from local towns, and the piece that parents were telling me is they were really looking for their child to be challenged, that they were finding in their towns that schools that are focusing a lot of their efforts around passing MCAS tests, having students pass MCAS tests, they're saying that's not enough, that their children aren't being challenged to really problem solve, all the 21st century skills that we talk about. And one of the things I think we've prided ourselves in Amherst, that we're going to be accountable to the tests, and we're going to continue to try to build the skills of all students so that they're going to be successful in those. But that's really a minimum bar of what we're trying to do, because the reality is we're not sending kids out into life to take skills tests.
Right.
We're sending them out to be able to collaborate, to be able to problem solve, to think creatively, and that's a focus of every single one of our classrooms in the Amherst schools. And that's something I directly hear about, both with why people are coming, and I'm hearing so much positive feedback from our school choice parents of how happy they are that they've made that decision.
I also wanted to add in too, and I know Marta and Kathy would like, I'm sure, jump in on this too, but Amherst is a place for children to be and to be acknowledged for who they are as individuals. It's not only about the academics. That's the goal, obviously high achievement for all students, and being able to challenge all students and support them all to reach that bar is why we're in our work. And we recognize the developmental levels of children and the needs of children, and we understand what it takes to really help kids to grow into themselves. Recognize who they are as individuals and cherish that, because the diversity, not just the diversity in a racial, cultural diversity, but just the acceptance of children for who they are. I find to be a beautiful thing, and it goes to helping people become happy, fulfilled adults. So
I just wanted to say that every year we get inquiries, families who want to choice in to our Amherst elementary schools. We hear over and over that they're impressed with how we value education, the community, the town, and the surrounding towns in the region, and how excellent our staff.
Yes.
Our teachers, our other professional staff, paraprofessionals, etc., and they hear about their commitment. They see in the news, they're excelling, in different areas, and their commitment to the children. This is evident, and this is something that is known. Right. So we take pride in the work we do, and we do really well. Thank you, Ms. Mazur and your staff, for recruiting
it's
staff
true.
that are, very competent, excellent, and that they're really committed to the whole child.
Exactly.
And so it's really important that people know that we value that.
And I do think, the expectations of staff, we do hire a remarkable staff, who are committed to the work, who are bright, committed, are able to, they go above and beyond, and that there's a culture of continuous improvement and continuous learning. And I think that is fostered from the moment of going to recruit. And I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about just the staff who walk through the door and our efforts to, because that's what who we are is the people who are working within our walls.
Well, we're still fortunate to attract a number of candidates to positions. We do have a very healthy applicant pool for most positions, and so we can be fairly selective about who we want to be working with our children. We're very lucky that way. We work hard once they're here to make sure they're successful. And there's one other thing I want to say, I think, about school choice, and my experience with school choice is the staff are always working hard, and regardless of where the child comes from, the staff make a commitment to every child who's in their classroom.
Right.
And I also think it's important to recognize the school choice parents who
I agree.
I think we're lucky to have so many active parents who are within our 4 towns. But then I think, Marta, too, that school choice parents are very, very involved, and they go above and beyond to support our schools as well. They're very grateful to be here, and it shows. So that's another positive thing about
I think
this.
Thank you for raising that, because we've had many conversations in Pelham that there's a number of families who are school choice families that comprise 50%
Yes.
of the school community, and the commitment of those families it is their school and their community, and who are on the PTOs and vitally volunteering part of the community is wonderful. So our community is wider than the parameters or the boundaries of our town, and it makes our schools richer.
We're welcoming, we're inclusive, and we love children. So
That's what it's all about.
yeah.
So we will, in a few minutes, be wrapping up. So I wanted to make sure that we had the opportunity to talk about, we will be very soon opening up school choice opportunities for families, probably within the next, I'd say, 4 weeks.
I would say 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah, 4 to 6 weeks. What we'll do is we'll advertise immediately. We'll wait for next week's vote, but clearly we will advertise and we'll get going. We already have had a number of inquiries. There are people that have tried a couple of years for whatever reason. They haven't received a slot, but we're committed to continuing to support them. And so we'll do that soon, and it'll be
Great.
up on our website and in the local news and the newspaper. So.
And we're happy to answer questions
Yes,
at
absolutely.
any point.
So in our website, and also you can call our office. So clearly, call the main number, and we'll be more than happy in both English and Spanish. So en español también.
Thank you.
And we can certainly find translators if there are any other concerns. So we can accommodate in that way too.
Thank you, Marta.
Yeah, so we start our regular registration process is starting up in March. It really starts getting busy. We have parent nights for the so we have 250 6th grade families that are moving up to us next year. So we start that process.
Great.
And we always put out to everybody that they're welcome to come to those, but then also to let us know if they have any questions. I get calls and emails all the time of parents that are starting to think about this and wanting to learn a little bit more. And we're always happy to do that.
Great.
So that help them make the right decision for their family.
The same for the high school.
Yep.
So clearly
And
the
Pelham.
same thing, and Pelham. So we work together to make
then
sure
we'll talk
that
about
we're.
And then we'll talk about Amherst very soon.
Yes.
So I
that's
want
exciting.
to thank you for coming and talking about this topic. It's maybe a typical topic for this roundtable discussion, but I think it's a timely discussion, and it's people have questions. So Hopefully we've answered some questions today for the community, and we'll be starting our process soon. And I think, obviously, I know our schools are an amazing place for children to be, and I thank you for representing them today. So thanks so much for coming.
Thank you.